Hey guys, welcome back to the Third Perspective podcast. I'm Cory, he's Sach. This will be episode 36. And as always, our opinions expressed here are our own. Sach, how you doing?
Good, bro. Just busy, man. It's been a busy few weeks, so just trying to get all the things done before this Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt. So now, usually this is where we would introduce a guest or something like that, but I wanted to take this week to really highlight what you have going on. We've sort of touched base on it at the end of our last few episodes here, but I want you to sort of delve into what's going on because I think it's important and I think it needs attention. So
Yeah. So, so yeah, like you said, we've been kind of touching on it over the last couple weeks on the podcast here, but over on the 30th of March, I'm hosting a fundraising gala with 9 speakers, including myself, and going to be sharing our experiences when it comes to mental health and some of the issues that we've dealt with, and also providing some um, tools and strategies for those in attendance that they can take away and maybe implement in their own lives. Now, that sounds all fancy and everything, but man, I had no clue on how to do something like this 2 months ago.
mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, I was just thinking, like, a couple months ago, I was thinking, man, there's got to be a way to highlight some of the people that we hang out with and highlight some of their knowledge and wisdom and pass that on to other people. I was just trying to find ways to do that. And I was hoping someone else would do it, to be honest. But having said that, I thought, you know what, let's figure out a way to get a group of us together and share that with others. And, another reason why I was thinking about it is like, this has never been done here before. Like something like what we're doing has never been done. Like where you have first responders, veterans, and people from the civilian world sharing their wisdom and knowledge as it relates to their issues they've dealt with when it came to mental health and how they've helped themselves through that process. And they're not just random people too. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
friends with we're friends with like some pretty exceptional people, and we always highlight people in the States or, down south. And I just thought, man, there's got to be an opportunity or a way to do that here in Canada with Canadians locally.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So obviously you said you have 9 people, correct?
Yeah.
And I know the lineup. I know pretty much everybody who's on there. So I know the value that it adds. But to the people and our listeners that are sitting there going, I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, what are they talking about here? Why is it that you've chosen the following lineup? Like, what is it that you think is going to be value added for anybody who's coming?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a mixture of people attending. So I wanted to have a mixture of experiences that could speak to everybody. So, maybe for some people, that special forces type of person might be just a little bit out of their sort of depth of understanding as it relates to maybe their skill sets. I don't think so, but maybe at first blush, people might think that way. So I wanted to make sure that
Mm,
we had enough people there that could speak to others. Um, so having said that, we have um, a bunch of people. Like, I mean, like honestly, man, I'm just off the top of my head. We like obviously we have Sean Taylor, a close friend of mine who's one of those special forces types of guys,
yeah.
JTF2, and he'll be speaking. And this is really interesting. He's speaking on mindset, but from the perspective of Miyamoto Musashi, who was a samurai back in the day. But now, having said that, it'll be how to live your life as a warrior with that warrior mindset and essentially a growth mindset, and how to implement
Mm,
that in your life.
mm-hmm,
Another
mm-hmm.
friend, Seb Lavoie, is a retired RCMP divisional sergeant major, and he'll be speaking on the power of introspect, introspection on yourself and reflecting, and how that actually can help yourself. Now, those are like the two sort of outlier type of people. When people look at them, they might say, "Oh, these guys, hard to relate to." Perhaps, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people might feel that way, even though they are super relatable. So I wanted to encourage other speakers coming who might have that sort of relatability on when they first see them. So, i.e., we have Julia Shelley, who's a retired UN flight attendant and a fitness champion. She'll be speaking on her experiences traveling with the UN in war-torn countries and the effects that had on her.
Hmm.
And when I
Hmm.
say war-torn countries, Afghanistan, Somalia, um, I mean, like a lot of those, the Sudan, Yemen, like a lot of these different types of places with a lot of upheaval, and
Hmm.
and she'll be speaking to that experiences as a civilian.
Yeah.
And so that I think can be um, is a speaker that most people might not have interactions with. We also have Travis Bader. He's a civilian as well, but he owns and he's CEO of Silver Core Outdoors, and his expertise is basically outdoor, right?
Hmm.
Outdoor
Hmm.
survival, hunting, fishing, trapping, um, just being in the element. And what he's going to speak on is the benefits of that as it relates to your mental health. We have Glenn Kirkland, and this guy's amazing, man. Like Glenn Kirkland is a retired Afghan war veteran, so he served in the Afghan war. He was injured there, and his severe injuries, actually, to be quite honest, and he'll dive into that a bit this weekend. But when he returned back, he was quite lost, and he was struggling a great deal with PTSD from his experiences. And he's going to share his experiences, how he navigated through that and became a successful entrepreneur. And we have Giselle Walsh. She's a veteran. She's based out of Edmonton, and she also works as the chief operating officer for Empower to Recover, which is a nonprofit charity that supports veterans and first responders with drug addiction and trying to. So she'll be explaining from her perspective her experiences, and then some her wisdom with resilience and her interactions with various different people that she's interacted with in her role with Empower to Recover. We have Cal Dosange, who's a veteran with the Vancouver Police Department. I believe it's 24 years, and he's the CEO of Kids Play Foundation. And Kids Play Foundation is a charity that supports kids and allows them to volunteer, play sports, and essentially tries to give them skill sets and community so that they stay away from gangs and violence.
Hmm.
And so he'll be speaking on the power of community and how that is helpful for one's mental health. We have myself. I'll be speaking on my experiences over the last few years, how I was struggling a great deal, and how setting goals for myself empowered me and allowed me to come out of the depths of the darkness that I was in. But not only for myself, but the power of setting goals and how that actually impacts everyone around you. And that's the true value of what I'll be talking about. We have, so that was, Alan DeGenova. He's the president of the Honor House Society, and he'll be
Yep.
the first speaker of the evening. And probably, I think, one of the most important ones, he'll be speaking on why we have Honor House and why we're gathering together in the evening to help support the charity and how they service veterans, first responders, and emergency personnel in uniform um, with their struggles. And then we have, man, bear with me, there's so many speakers. Uh, we have, so we said Julia, Glenn, um, Alan, Seb, Sean, me, um, Cal, Yeah, so that's
Travis.
all of us. That's all of
Yeah.
us.
I was going to
Yeah.
say my count was 9, but I figured you had that surprise witness you were going to pull in, and
Man,
defense
no
counsel was going to
surprises.
freak out.
I don't want any surprise. The only surprise witness would be like David Goggins or someone like that.
Oh, there you go. That'd be a draw. Yeah, no, and interestingly enough, and just in case anybody was wondering where I was going, the entire podcast was shutting down here because I forgot to plug something in, so I had to get up and do that. So Such was the sole proprietor of our podcast there for a few seconds. But no, the reason why I wanted to bring it up is you have 9 people, right? And obviously, you said some varying backgrounds, and somebody who's not familiar with them might tie a common theme through them. But one of the things that I know from knowing pretty much everybody here is that when they talk about things, they use their experience and their background as almost a backdrop. And the message that they're saying or things that they're talking about or what they're going to be talking about here, while they'll touch base on what's happening, they'll draw it into their regular life now. And I say regular life, quote unquote. It's not a regular life, but they really draw it as in these are the lessons that I learned based off of what happened before. And this is how I continue on with my life. This is what the value that I get out of this. This is what I want you to know that I think would be beneficial to you. Am I right? Am I wrong?
100%. Absolutely right. There's a couple things here, man. Why did I start this thing? Why did I decide to do this? There's a few reasons. One of them, obviously, I wanted to highlight the speakers. One is I had no idea how to do it. I had no
Hmm.
clue on how to put an event together, and an event together that would be of this caliber and within 60 days. Like I had no
Yeah.
clue.
Yeah.
So it has been a massive learning curve for me. And I think for me, the most important things that I've learned over this time of trying to organize something like this is understand why you're doing it, understand how it's going to help the people or what you're trying to do in trying to put on an event, and how that can help those in attendance. And then also, what I learned was like what kind of people you need around you to be able to execute and put this type of thing on.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
those have been massive learning curves. Like, I mean, through that process, I had a few people helping throughout the process at the beginning, but what I started realizing is, certain types of people need to be involved in this type of event who believe in it without, um, with full conviction, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes, when things get difficult, people are like, "Oh, it's a challenge. I can't deal with it, or it's too hard, and maybe
I'm
they
going to
can't
hold back,
engage."
right?
Yeah, and it's hard to engage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I would say one of the things that I learned is less is more. So maybe if you have one or two people helping or assisting or planning something, that's all you kind of need as long as you believe in it, because you'll get after it and make sure you get all the things done rather than having a ton of different people who are kind of in and out. So that I was very helpful for me to understand and identify, because the hope after this weekend is not only to have it as a one-off here in Vancouver. And based on how things are going, I'm most definitely probably going to be taking this to Toronto in the fall,
Hmm.
so that we can also engage with the community out there and provide this service to others. And then eventually in Halifax at the end of the year. So it's not just a one off. It was really important for me to understand how to properly do this
Hmm.
so that we could take it across the country.
You brought up a couple of really interesting points that I think can relate to a lot of our listeners' daily lives. And so I'm trying to think back to sort of some of the big planning things that I've had to do. Obviously, I've never had to organize a night like this. But if I think about something like a family vacation or a wedding or something like that, my expectations, even though I didn't know it, were always completely out of whack. And the idea is let's say a family vacation. Oh, this is going to be perfect. We spent a year saving up for this. This is exactly what we want to do. It's going to be perfect. Well, if I start off with the idea that it's going to be perfect or it has to be perfect, then I've already lost. Like it doesn't matter what that vacation is going to do. Perfect is the base amount, which we're never going to obtain. So everything else is just going to be negative. If I set and it's not setting an expectation to be quote unquote realistic. It's about the fact that what am I trying to get out of this? Like you said, what's the base idea, right? My base idea is I'd like people to have some fun and I'd like us to see a couple of things on this vacation that we wouldn't normally. I don't care what else happens after that. If we accomplish that, 100% we're good to go. And I know that I have been completely unsuccessful doing that with my family because somebody starts to complain about something and all of a sudden, oh, vacation's ruined because people aren't having fun. And man, people aren't having fun at home. That doesn't mean the day at home is
Mhm.
ruined, but somehow because it's this thing that I've planned, it's all of a sudden bad. Or a wedding, like this has to be perfect because it means so much to me. Rather than, I know when my wife and I did our wedding, the idea was we have a small select group of people and all we want them to do is be fed and have fun and not have to worry about dancing. We accomplished that. So we considered it a successful wedding and we hung out with a bunch of friends and had some drinks and that was it. We just happened to call it a wedding. So for us, that was the expectation. We accomplished that and everything was good. But I think that sort of draws on to what you're saying. Like, what are you trying to do with this night? And I think that by bringing these people together, people are going to get value added that they don't know they're going to get,
Mm.
because they're coming for a nice night. They're going to have a great meal. They're going to hang out with some awesome people. Oh, and by the way, you're also going to listen to a bunch of people who are going to drop a whole bunch of knowledge, nine lifetimes worth of knowledge on you. And you can pick and choose what you want. You don't have to take all of it. You don't have to agree with some of the things that are said. But if you take little nuggets that you walk out the door, and we've always said, get up, make your bed, don't hit the snooze button, all the rest of it. If you take a little nugget that allows you to make your bed in the morning and makes your life a little bit better, man, that's value added, mission accomplished, right?
100%, man. Look, I've had to, and it was, so I would like for those in attendance or who are coming, just keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind, just taking the information. Like you said, pick and choose what you think will fit in your life and move forward. But to your point about creating something where, find out what the goal is, the how you want things to play out. And man, I've had to adjust it quite often, man, because
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
contrary to maybe how you think, man, I'm a dreamer and I put like I'm so
mm-hmm,
some people might say delusional, man.
mm-hmm,
So when I
mm-hmm,
first started this, my goals were like way always my goals are so astronomical and I have to recalibrate through the process. And so for me, right off the bat, I know the value of these speakers. Like I absolutely know them. So in my mind, I set the price point at my thoughts of what the value is. You
mm-hmm,
know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So no one knows who these people are.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
I had to make a few adjustments after a couple weeks because maybe it was a bit too high of pricing. So I've had to also through the planning process be humble and not force feed things down people's throat. And you know what I need to what I need to do is get people there, even if it's at a cost to my own back pocket,
mm-hmm,
so that people can see who's there and then appreciate the wisdom. Because at the end of the day, man, we're having the whole evening filmed. So if whoever's not in attendance will get some sort of bits and pieces of what the event's like, so that when we can promote that after the fact, then Toronto is like, oh, wait a second, what's going on over there? Oh, okay, cool. Maybe, and so then maybe the price point can go a little bit higher as
mm-hmm.
it does cost money to put these things together, right? Like it's not a
Yeah,
cheap
yeah,
thing to do.
yeah.
So anyway, I've had to kind of recalibrate, reconfigure, backstep, and then move forward. But again, like I said, man, it's been a learning the whole time.
But the big thing with you that I'm taking from you is you're saying like you've had to recalibrate, but you had these astronomical goals. And it's not to say that those won't be accomplished, but you realized, hey, I need to recalibrate. But to you, it wasn't an immediate failure. And I think in the normal everyday life that I know I've dealt with, and I know our listeners have too, if we have astronomical goals and they're not met, I bring myself back to that example of the vacation. All of a sudden, it's a failure, but
Hmm.
it's not. All I do is recalibrate and I go, okay, it's astronomical. Nobody's going to fight. Everybody's going to be great. We're always going to, have no lines. And all of a sudden we do, and I go recalibrate and I go, yeah, but the sun's still shining and we're still on vacation and it's still good. That idea of recalibration rather than failure. Right. And
Hmm.
I want to touch base on that because that's something that you've learned over a long period of time, that just
Hmm.
because something is astronomically, or the expectations are astronomical, just because you don't meet them doesn't mean that it's a failure immediately.
No, it doesn't. And so I still have those goals, but maybe those goals will be year two,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe the price point of which I had envisioned might not be for a couple more years. That's okay. Now, was I poopy pants for a few days? Yeah, of course, man. I was poopy pants. There have been at least 5 times I've pooped my pants, at
Yeah.
least,
Yeah.
because things didn't go the way I was expecting them to. And look, I am not. I'm human too, man. I'm just like everybody else. So when things go in a direction, okay, I'll give you an example. I had priced the evening at $250 a ticket right off the
Mm-hmm.
bat
Mm-hmm.
because I believe that's what it's worth. That's what I believe. Now, we didn't sell a single ticket for 2 weeks, right? So then I'm like, oh man, did I F this up? Am I going to be on the hook for all this stuff? Is
Mm-hmm.
anyone going to show up? How embarrassing is this? Like I was thinking about all the things. What are these people going to say? What are these people going to say? Like all of them. And so what did I do? I could have just stayed and canceled the whole thing,
Hmm.
stayed in my room and been like, oh man, I can't pull this off. But
Hmm.
what I tried to do is engaged with people that I thought might have an understanding of how to do these things and ask them, hey, did I price this too high? Or what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? And through those discussions with other people that have been in this space for a bit, I made a decision to bring the price down at an early bird ticket pricing of $75 so we can get people through the door. Just get people in there, man. Whatever. And then now I think I found the reasonable price point, based on the market. I think 125 is reasonable for what we're trying to offer, 9 speakers, wisdom, food, dinner, music, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, man, there've been multiple times I've had to spend a day just processing and recalibrating and figuring out, okay, what's my next step here?
Hmm. Yeah, and again, I want to draw it back to our listeners too. The idea of your day to day life. So, some of the biggest goals that people have is getting into shape. We've talked about this, and the process is, yeah, you're going to want astronomical goals, right? Your idea is this perfect fitness model with your head on it, right? Like that's the astronomical goal. And you go and you try and you do it for a month, you're sore, you don't like doing this, you wake up early and you're not seeing many results, or maybe you did and now you're not. And the idea is that's not a failure. It's time to recalibrate. It's time to figure out, okay, what are my immediate goals right now? My immediate goal is not to lose 60 pounds because I'm not going to lose 60 pounds immediately. So if I recalibrate and I say, my goal is to keep going, right? Even if there's no difference in what I think is happening, my goal is to keep going. I'm going to recalibrate. And then I'm going to touch base with those people like you did. I'm going to touch base with people that maybe have been through this, maybe are going through this. And I'm going to say, hey, what happened to you? And they're going to say, hey, don't worry about it. I know exactly what you're going through. These are the next steps. And you get a little bit more recalibrated and then you start to get more focused. So I really want to touch base on that it's not a failure if you have to recalibrate. In fact, it's a success,
100%.
right?
I agree, man. It's just, this is a skill I've had to learn over the last few years, man, because I was that guy, all or nothing. I had a very polarized way of thinking. Right? It's all in or all out, or if it's a failure if I don't do that. Like just like a lot of people think that way. Like to your fitness example, people will train, try to reach a certain, want to lose this much weight, this, that, and the other, and they might have an idea of how long that might take. But what happens if it doesn't take the amount of time that it takes for you? Are you going to give up? Are you going to quit?
Yeah.
No, you just keep going and maybe readjust things a little bit. Maybe understand your situation a bit more. I have a couple examples that might be very helpful here. One of my clients, has been losing weight, been very consistent, doing an amazing job, like all the behaviors doing real well. But then he's been focusing on the scale like over the last few weeks, like, oh my God, my weight kind of hasn't shifted this much, that much. So he started beating himself up. It's like, man, my weight just stays here or it doesn't go down, but I can see a difference, but I don't understand. Like it was just getting in his head, right? So all it took was a conversation with him to just change the perspective. It's like, okay, cool. Where were you 3 months ago,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What have you learned over the last 3 months? Do you have new patterns of behavior that you haven't had before? Um, are your clothes fitting differently? Do you look different in the mirror? Right? So the scale is the maybe one metric to look
Yeah.
at, but there are so many other metrics you can observe to encourage yourself that you're on the right path and to keep moving in that direction. Another client that I have was a bigger guy, heavier, and I've been working with him for almost 8 9 months, something like that. And he initially dropped, let's say 25 30 pounds right after, like really quickly, and then now it's been slow and steady, like for months. It's been like super 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 slow, and so he's again beating himself up. So I had to remind him, hey man, like look how far you've come, look at the things that you've accomplished, look at the patterns that you've created, and look at your body and physique is changing even despite the weight hasn't gone down. So when you're thinking about an 8 or 9 month period, you might have gained some muscle. So then, that kind of balances out. So if you're focused on one thing and one thing like a spotlight on it, it's very hard to look at the other things that you're gaining through that process.
Yeah. And success is addicting, right? You start off and you feel like you haven't had any success, you haven't had any wins, and all of a sudden you start doing something and it's starting to work out really well. You start getting addicted to that. And then when it starts to taper off, as it's to be expected, you're almost like an addict. You want that success again. And you start panicking because I want the success. I want that dopamine hit. I want to keep doing this because I love the way that it makes me feel. When really, like you said, you're not doing anything bad. We often have short-term or short-sightedness for long-term goals, right? So the idea is my long-term goal is over the next year, I'd like to, to use the workout analogy, I'd like to lose 20 pounds. And initially you're like, oh, I dropped 6 pounds in a week. This is going to take no time. I don't even need this year. But meanwhile, for the next 3 months, you might lose 1 because, as you said, you're building muscle, but you don't see that. But you're addicted to that idea. So you think, this is a failure. I can't do a year. A year is going to do nothing. This is crap. I don't know what's going on. And I know I'm like that. Like the short-sightedness, I should say, is so what am I trying to say here, as you would say? The short-sightedness is blinding me to the long-term success that I'm actually having, because it's not an immediate dopamine hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a shot to the bloodstream. It's this long, sustained, nice feeding of what's happening. And I think that, again, if I recalibrate and figure out why does this matter to me, because that's a big thing that I've had stuck in my head is when I get upset, when I'm happy about something, I ask myself, why does this matter to me? And if I can break it down to the very base idea, I'll know if I'm succeeding or not. If my kids are happy at the park, I'm like, why does this matter to me? Well, because I want them to be out in the sun. I want them to get exercise. I want them to be happy. I want them to create a memory. Well, am I doing all of that? Yeah. Then who cares if, there's a ton of people here? Who cares if it took us half an hour to drive here? Who cares about all that? The short-sightedness of it, oh, look at all the problems, completely overshadows the fact that they might remember this for 6 months, a year, 10 years. You never know.
No, I think you're not alone in that, though, man. I think a lot of people, and probably the majority of people, me included, um, want what we want, and we want it now,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for me, over the last few years, I've changed a bit of that way of thinking, and I now kind of understand a bit more that mm, anything worth achieving, no matter what it is, will take time.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to remind myself when I get impatient with whatever I'm trying to do. That's what I remind myself of. I remind myself, and how do I do that, man? Like I reflect back on things that I've done that I've been happy with, that I've been successful at, and I
Mm-hmm.
observed how long those things took.
Mm-hmm.
And man, like if anyone does that, you'll notice anything worth achieving does take a long time. And when we're talking about, let's say, losing weight again, that's step one. What's the goal? Step one is to get into a physical condition where you can start doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So losing weight's just really step one to get to a baseline. So I think people might be super focused on that one piece, but not really understanding what's outside of that because they don't know what they don't know. Once you get to a certain place that you can start, now you can start playing. Let's say you lose, I don't know, let's say someone needs to lose 20 pounds
Mm-hmm.
because, or 30 pounds or 50 pounds, whatever the thing is, to get to a weight that is more healthy for them.
Yeah.
Well, they'll get to that weight and then they've achieved the thing that they want, but they don't understand. Now you're at the starting line.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the fun time. What do you actually want to do? Do you want to do this thing over here? Do you want to do this thing over there? And then experience life through that process.
Yeah, that's the benefit. It's not the end goal of losing weight. The benefit is your life after that. And I also want to touch base again is the simple fact that when you look back on your accomplishments, I have been guilty, and I don't know if any of our listeners are, but I have been guilty of looking back and for whatever reason, being in the wrong mindset. I wasn't in a growth mindset when I was talking about this, but taking past successes and trying to justify why they were failures. And I know that sounds really strange, but it's like, oh, well, that was a success. Well, the only reason that was a success was because of blank. I had help. That's the only reason that happened. Or, I did this, but anybody could have done that. And the idea is I don't know why, but we minimize our successes, especially when we're in a situation where we don't feel that we should succeed in our current one. And maybe that's just me. Maybe nobody else is doing that, but I have been guilty of doing that in the past. And it's this idea of minimizing it and then almost justifying why I should fail in this one. Because even though I had previous successes, there were reasons why. And it didn't have anything to do with me. So I want to touch base on that and just make sure that we understand that our successes are our successes. Don't go back and quantify them.
No, I agree, man. I think like I don't think you're alone in that either. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
people think that way, I think, right? So what is it,
Hmm.
imposter syndrome to a certain degree and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like I mean, remember when I was mentioning when I ran the 22 marathons right before I did it, I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this thing. And then I did the 22 marathons. I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. I did it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you're not alone in that. And
Yep.
I think there can be a positive to it if you use it correctly.
Hmm.
And no, that what okay, how do I explain that? So for me, I understand how I think. I understand who I am better than I have in the past. So what I try to look at is, let's say, for example, I did the 22 marathons, and I right after doing it, I'm like, oh, that's not that big of a deal because I just did it. Fine, just
Hmm.
kind of what I try to do is kind of compartmentalize that a little bit, and then saying, okay, if that's not a big deal, okay, let's what's the next step? But I think what I need to do and what I have been doing now is still appreciating the fact that we did those 22 marathons. And there were things that I learned through that. So I focus on what I learned rather than the thing itself that was completed. So then for me, I get value out of that. And then it's not as negative as thinking, oh man, I just did it. So it's not that big a deal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't beat yourself up because after you accomplish something, it was easier than you thought it was going to be. That doesn't mean that it diminished what you were doing. It just means that you were more capable than you thought you were. And I think we do that. At least, like I said, I know I've done that where I've put something off for a very long time because of several reasons. And then I go and do it and I'm like, why didn't I do that like months ago? Months ago. It's made my life so much better. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it wasn't a big deal because, well, it only took half the time I thought it was going to. And I think we do that. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit in our day-to-day lives. Like some of our listeners are parents, right? And the idea is we usually have a tough time for it, but then the time that it goes right, we don't give ourselves credit for it going right because we're like, oh, well, that wasn't that tough. No, man, you laid a ton of groundwork to make that happen. You planned it out, you did whatever, and you know what? Maybe you were a better version of yourself on that day. And you did something really, really awesome. And I
Hmm.
don't want people to cut down. So, like, to draw it back to sort of your evening, is you've had to learn a lot. You know the amount that you've gone through, but somebody sitting there might go, yeah, this is really cool. I bet you I could do this. And I bet you could, but you're going to have to do some hard learning. And even though at the end you're like, yeah, everything went off really well, it went off without a hitch, which I expect it to go, you don't go, yeah, I don't know what the big deal was. I don't know why I was so stressed out about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
It's
know?
funny, man, because like that's kind of how I feel, and I probably will feel that way Saturday night if everything goes all well and everything. Like, yeah, well, this was all right, not a big deal. I pulled it off.
It'll go well. It'll go well.
But having said that, I mean, yeah, man, it's been a roller coaster, and thankful that I have certain people around me, right,
Hmm.
to lean on to help me recalibrate, help me refocus, help me continue on the path because what we're doing is important. The
Yeah.
Saturday night is an important thing. For those in attendance, for the speakers, for myself, just for everybody all around. I mean, my parents are going to be there, man.
Hmm.
Like for me,
Hmm.
that's a cool thing. My parents
Hmm.
are going to be there, and they've never seen me in this kind of capacity before, and so I'm sure they'll be, you know, feeling proud,
Yeah.
right? And you always want to make your parents feel proud, right?
Yeah.
And me just
But
thinking
you
about making them proud makes me emotional thinking about it.
I was gonna say, but did you notice that you paused when you said that? Because
Yeah.
you weren't I don't think you were 100% convinced yourself that they were gonna be proud.
I had to think about it.
Yeah.
I had to put myself in their shoes to think about what they would be thinking as I'm speaking, or what they would be thinking as some of my friends are speaking. Um, I think they would be proud, and they've said it to me before.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But sometimes
Mhm.
I don't feel that way, so I have to
Yeah.
empathize and put myself in them, and
Yeah.
then think how would I feel, and how. So, yes, of course they'll be proud, and I want them to, this for me is a really big deal. I'll explain a few things, not only for that, but for my connection with my family. Um, because I've have some things,
Mhm.
parents wise and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's like, excuse me, all the struggles, all the things they've been through, all the sacrifices they've made, all the trauma that, you know, I probably gave them, and vice versa,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So it'll be a special evening, I think, and I have to think about how to properly take that all in too, right? Because I don't want to shut that off for the night. I want to be able to take it in, but I also want to find that fine line where I don't get too emotional too. So it's an interesting thing, man. This last few weeks,
Well, start off the evening with acknowledging that they're proud of you without them having to
yeah,
say it, and then go from there, right?
that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's a good idea, man. Yeah,
Just just
I might start crying, pull like a David Goggins at one of those things.
that's totally fine, man. People will
Yeah,
love it. But and you know what? For our listeners as well, let somebody know you're proud of them. Like seriously, let them know you're proud of them. I expect that my daughters know that I'm proud of them, but unless I say it, and trust me, when I say things like that, they melt. They literally like collapse into me. They're giving me big hugs and they've closed eyes, scrunched up and all the rest of it because it means so much to them. Now, I
it
think I tell
does.
them that all the time, but to them, it means so much. So think about you who probably, or the person you're going to say it to hasn't heard it in 10 years.
Yeah. No,
Initially,
it's a
they might
trip.
be a little bit defensive, but
No, but it's a trip, man. Man, I'm glad you mentioned about your daughters, because just a few, what was it, a couple days ago, I was talking to my daughter, and I was telling her, I was like, I'm proud of you, and I say it very frequently with her if she's earned it, and I uh, I I say to her for sure, I'm proud of you, and then she asked me why are you proud of me, and then I just kept listing things off.
mhm,
I just told her what I'm proud of, and
mhm,
I don't know, maybe about 30 seconds of me just rattling things off. And then she's like, "Oh, that's a lot." I go, "Yeah, I'm proud of you."
yeah,
And man, just seeing how she responded to that was like, I hope that feeds her. I
mhm.
hope that um, empowers her to feel confident, and that will hopefully make her a very resilient person in the future. At least one of the things that I try to do with her.
Well, and an off tangent there. The big thing that I always tell my daughters as well is I have little rituals I do at the end of the night and all the rest of it when they're going to bed. And they expect it. And I've even recorded it just in case I'm working a night shift and they'll ask to have my voice played when they're going to bed. And I've told them there are going to be people, most of the people out there who are going to try to tell you the opposite of what I'm telling you. When that happens, remember back to what I've said.
Mm.
So that's that thing. If you tell people that you're proud of them, if you tell them why they're important to you, they will remember that because there is going to be so many people out in that world that are going to try to convince them otherwise for whatever reason. None of them are good, but they're going to try to convince them of that. And like you said, they earn it, but they earn
Hmm.
it because they're good people.
Hmm. No,
But
for sure. It's a. We could probably talk like at least an hour on this.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
about like how we talk to our kids, and look, I just pretty much just try to do some of the things my parents never did, right? Not that they didn't want to, or whatever. It's just different culture, and things of that nature. But I dance with my daughter sometimes. Like she's like, "Hey, let's go
Hmm.
dance." I'm like, "Oh,
Hmm.
right." So like these are things that are bringing me out of who I am, or no. That's not a correct statement. It's bringing me out to become who I am,
Yeah.
right? And authentically, as the expressing myself authentically without fear of judgment, man. And that fear of judgment, man, it's a killer. It is a killer of being able to just be yourself and express yourself how you want. And man, I'm still learning, and I'm
Mhm.
getting there, I want to be just like a lot of other people, just being confident and comfortable in your own skin.
Mhm. It kind of brings us into the topic I want to talk about for about our next 20 minutes here, which is the idea that what we've been talking about in a roundabout way the entire time, which is a 4-letter word, which is team. Now, I know what I think of when I think of the word team, and I'm sure probably some of our listeners are having the same idea. But I think that that word is not always what we think it is. And I wanted to draw it onto your evening that's coming up here. But to you, Such, what is team?
Okay. A group like a group of like-minded individuals trying to work their hardest and best to achieve a common goal.
Mm-hmm. And that's initially what I absolutely would think a team is. When
Hmm.
I want to be part of a team, that's what I want. Now, you've said like-minded individuals working towards a common goal, right? Now, is there any place in that team for a contrarian? Is there any place in that team for a devil's advocate? Is the team stronger when somebody does not have that common goal or does not agree?
So I think you can be a contrarian or devil's advocate and still have common vision.
Mm,
I think you I think sometimes it's really important to have someone who thinks differently. Because when I hear contrarian or someone who's I think someone who thinks outside of the box or might have a different way of thinking than the others.
mhm, mhm,
And sometimes that's good to have, man. Like I'm one of those guys. I'm a contrarian, man. I am such a contrarian. I am always looking for the gaps and holes, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I used to think it was a bad thing. I used to think, oh man, I just should just shut my mouth because I just think differently. So I'll just keep my mouth shut because everyone else wants to do a certain way or a certain thing.
mhm,
But I think, in certain groups, it's important, especially in teams that are trying to achieve something that is maybe very challenging or
mhm.
hasn't been done very often or whatever. Because if something hasn't ever been done or hasn't been done often, you need people to think outside the box because
Yeah.
you got to start thinking, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's important.
And the reason I bring that up is because the idea of, a horse team, right? All the horses are pulling in the same direction, the same load, they have the same goal, they're going to get that across. Well, you don't want one horse trying to run off to the left. It's not going to do you any good, right? It's not helping it. But that being said, if you have somebody that says, "Hey, do we need that load? What about those wheels? What would happen if one of those horses would come up lame and wouldn't be able to pull anymore? Would we still be able to do that? Do we need to add two more? And do we need to do a different route? Is there something that's going on?" And like I said, I think that's more the devil's advocate rather than a contrarian, because a contrarian's more like everybody wants to do this, I'll do the opposite, even though I don't believe that. You know what I mean? But I was thinking about it because I think of all the high performing teams that a lot of your guests have been on and been involved in. Specifically, quite a few of the operators and things like that. And I would be very interested to know who was the devil's advocate and what was the value in those teams, if they had any. And if they didn't, what was the result of that? Because I
Mm.
know I'm surrounded by team all the time. I just don't realize it. And I think that that's one of the points that I want to express to our listeners right now is that to accomplish everything that we've been talking about up to now has resulted in a team. Yeah, there's, lone wolf people that'll do it themselves and stuff like that. But you are going to benefit from a team, whether or not you know it or not. For instance, your daughter. You're teaching your daughter things, but you're teaching your daughter things not as you, but as you who's had the benefit of this entire team around you for years, They might be different teams, but she is getting the benefit of that team and therefore being part of that team. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's true, right? I mean, any little bit of wisdom I have is either from my experiences or from the experiences of others, right? And a lot of the wisdom that I have comes from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't create any of these concepts or anything. It's just that other people have learned from other people, and those people learned from other people, and that's kind of what we do, right? Like if we learn something, we should be passing that on if it's helpful for someone else.
Yep.
And yeah, and there will be people on the evening that have been on very high performing teams. And I am 100% certain that those teams that they were on, not all of them thought exactly the same way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And perhaps that's why I kind of relate to a couple of those people very closely, because I can relate to how they think, and I
Mm-hmm.
can relate to the benefits of thinking in such a way. But you know what, you were saying that it benefits us, right, being a part of these teams, but really I think it benefits yeah, of course us, but everyone around us, man, like you were saying. And um we just become force multipliers essentially, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
take in this knowledge, and then we maybe pressure test it
Yeah.
for our experiences, right?
Yep. Yep.
To see if it's accurate or not, as you should.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, you turn it into your own so that you can pass that on to other people. And yeah, man, who doesn't want to see everyone around them doing awesome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's an
Mm-hmm.
awesome thing to like if everyone around me was like crushing it, and most of them are, well, that will make me want to crush it even more, not to compete with them, but to level up my game so that I can keep up,
Mm-hmm.
so I can still
Well,
be part of the team.
and I wanted to highlight this because with your evening coming up, the one thing that I'm thinking, and I touch base on it, is it's basically 9 lifetimes of experience that you get to sample from. You don't have to eat an entire meal of each guest, but you can sample from it. And you can, and it is okay to play devil's advocate in your brain. Don't shout it out at the evening, but in your brain, play devil's advocate to what anybody is saying. And that's okay. Now, you can quantify that with experience and knowledge and real world application and all the rest of it. Just because you disagree with somebody doesn't necessarily mean you're right. It might not stand up to a stress test, but you can play devil's advocate with what people are saying. But I know when you are surrounded by that team that you are going to get something, even if you disagree with some guests or some things, which I don't think you're going to go. If you're buying a ticket to this, you're probably not going to disagree too much with what's going on. But when people are watching it after the fact, I think that they're going to understand the benefit of the team, even if they don't agree with everything. And I just kind of wanted to touch base on that because I think we get caught up too much in the fact that I'm part of a team. This person doesn't necessarily see eye to eye with everybody. Therefore, our team is dysfunctional.
Yeah, well, listen, I got an example on that too, man. Just recently part of this team. I'm not going to give out any names or anything, but we interact with a lot of these people on a daily basis, right? And sometimes when you're not communicating frequently on a team, things can kind of turn sour, right? And it, my relationship with an individual within this team started turning sour. Um, but you know what I recognized? There's a few things that I recognized with some help from other people from this team. And if we're on the team, that means we all have a same direction and vision, right? And what I have to do is also understand and empathize with those other individuals on this team, that they do have their best interest for the team at heart.
Mhm.
So that was the fundamental thing for me. I got to understand that not everyone is might have the same work ethic. Not everyone might, do this, that, and the other. But we're all good-hearted people. We're all like-minded people. So having some empathy and understanding for those that might not be doing the same types of things as another person, it's all good. So for me, it's super important to also recognize that there's a place and a role for everyone on a team.
Mhm.
You can't cherry pick your team. right?
Mhm.
And that was someone said that to me. So you can't cherry pick your team. You're on the team, man. So it's like if you're on a team, and that makes a ton of sense, right? Like because what's the point of a team is not only to execute against the goal, but is also to improve each other on the team
Mhm.
so that we can all move in the same direction. So let's say, for example, I'm down here and another person's up here. Well, you don't just cherry pick and kick this person out of the team because then they aren't performing as well. You want to kind of guide them so that they can level up so we're all at the same level. So that was a good learning lesson for me. And I've been learning a ton like this, like over the last few weeks. This is one of the learning lessons for me. Like,
Mhm.
hey, we're on a team. Everyone's got value.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why this sort of started sticking into my head, other than the fact that I viewed all your guests and yourself on there as literally a team that could come together, that comes together with a common goal and a common purpose, and has varying different backgrounds, but adds to that purpose in order to accomplish that goal. I had a recent thing in my job where I had to write performance assessments, and they're annual performance assessments, and nobody likes writing them. People believe that they don't mean anything. People don't really care. Some people don't put a lot of effort into. Some of the supervisors don't put a lot of effort into writing them. And I probably sat down and I probably did 12 hours worth of writing these
Wow.
assessments, trying very hard to get them done. And one of the things that really came or one of the things that came to me that was glaringly obvious at the end of this was I had this team that initially, you know what, they'll challenge me, they'll push me, they'll try to get away with things. They don't always necessarily have a common goal to what I think should be the common goal. But when I was sitting down and writing these performance assessments for the people, I was realizing how awesome the team was, like how awesome the individual people were. And none of them were the same. They were awesome for different reasons. And it wasn't just skill sets. It was awesome because of what they brought. And some of them was because they were the devil's advocate. And I wrote that. And I'm like, you know what? They're always willing to provide an opinion. Now, again, just having an opinion doesn't make you valuable, but it's what you bring with that opinion, that different viewpoint, that idea, that we're still all ultimately trying to accomplish a goal, even if we're bringing up something that's maybe not agreeable or maybe it's not the popular opinion. If the ultimate goal, again, is to lose weight, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I know you're doing this, but have you thought about doing this?" They're not immediately the devil. They're still part of your team. It's just something that you need to take on. And there may eventually be value in that. You may look back on that and go, man, I didn't want to hear what they had to say. It didn't have to be negative. It just wasn't on brand for what I was doing. But I really am glad that they did that because it put me on this path.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, it gets you to think about something else, another perspective, right? And you know, other perspectives are good to have, man. Like even if you disagree with them, because if you disagree with them, at least you can understand that other person a bit better and what people like that and how they think. So
Mhm.
now you're still learning something
Mhm.
because you're understanding a different person and their perspective and how some other people might be thinking about certain types of things. So I guess with everything, it's perspective. You can have a negative perspective or a positive perspective. What do you want to get out of this information? What do you what's the purpose of getting this information? Can you utilize it? Are you able to? And I think if at least for me, I think about things on how to do things better and how to improve myself as much as I
Yeah.
can. So
Yeah.
it's leading with that all the time.
Well, think about relationships too, right? Relationships and family. People are not going to agree all the time with what you're doing. In fact, they may have some very strong opinions on that. But if you can reframe that and recalibrate, as we were talking about at the beginning, to have that be okay, if I put this into perspective, that they are a team member that I have on my team who's providing me advice, and I can examine that and stress test it and see what it is, rather than this person doesn't believe in me and they never care. And I'm not saying there are people that are out there that are like that, but if we can reframe the way that we view things as this is somebody I'm going to consider them part of my team because they're looking out for me, even though they might not have the experience or the knowledge to do so, but they're providing an opinion. I'm going to take that opinion on board. I'm going to stress test it, and I'll go, thanks very much for that opinion, rather than, you son of a bitch, how dare you try to tell me what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
But
Well,
it
I
was
think.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go finish.
No,
No.
no.
No. The reason why that resonates is because, like, look, everyone's got an opinion, right? And um, what I try to do is, if something is counter to how I'm already thinking or feeling, and I'm getting irritated with it, or someone's kind of pissing me off with their contrarianism, um,
Mm-hmm.
I try to think about them as a person. Is this person good? Are they coming from a good place? Are they well intentioned? Are they evil? These are the things that go
Mm-hmm.
through my head. And if
Mm-hmm.
I remind myself that they're a good person and that their heart's in the right place, then I'll listen to it, because
Yeah.
they're not trying to hurt me. They're just giving their perspective. And I think for me, that's been super helpful, thinking that way.
All right. I think I want to tie this all up together back with A Night to Inspire. So obviously, this will be released tomorrow on the 27th of March, and your night is the 30th, correct?
That's correct.
Is there any way, if somebody wants to support this, if they want to buy tickets, if they're going to be in Vancouver, is there any way from when they're listening to this tomorrow that they can still get that before the night of the 30th? Or are you selling on like at the night itself?
No, I believe tomorrow, Thursday, will be the last day that the Eventbrite's up.
Mm,
So tickets will be pretty much done on Thursday, because we also have to give the venue the numbers so that they can create the food, make the food appropriately. So having said that, if you're not in the Vancouver area and you think what we're doing is a good thing and would bring value to not only to the people in attendance, but to the internet, because we'll be posting a lot of this stuff online, I would encourage people to buy a ticket as a donation, because then I can connect with local law enforcement community, and even from local detachments or like Surrey Police or whatever, and I can engage with them, and so that they can bring people out, so that
mhm,
they can take value of what's going to be happening. That's one way of supporting. If you're in the area, I encourage you to buy a ticket and come and experience something that has never happened in Canada before. Experience something that will be educational and helpful for others, and be part of something special. And why am I saying that? Part of something special. Why is this a fundraising gala? It's because we're raising money for the Honor House Society, but we're also raising money to support my initiatives, which is to raise awareness and funds by running, right? And this year I'll be running 60 kilometers a day for 52 days this summer. So that costs money. So that's part of the fundraising, but also for next year when I run across Canada and attempt to break the record for the fastest run. So a lot of this is being part of history if you want to,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
if you want to be in attendance, there'll be shirts there as well. I'm getting some shirts made, so the shirts will be there. So if someone wants to even buy a shirt, the shirts will all go towards the fundraising efforts to execute against what I'm trying to do. And these shirts, I don't know, if it were me and someone was trying to attempt to do something, I'd be like, I want to get that shirt just to have it.
mhm,
And so, just for the listeners, for those listening, the shirt is almost like a concert shirt. When you have the dates and the cities of where the concert's going,
mhm,
and so it's kind of that perspective. And just quickly, this year when I'm running those 60K a day, a lot of them will be within BC, but I'm not going to be running across the province or anything like that. We'll be staying within the Lower Mainland for quite a bit of it, and then
mhm,
I'll be flying to Edmonton, running from Edmonton to Calgary. So we're trying to engage the community there as much as we possibly can. Fly to Toronto, run from Toronto to Ottawa, engaging the community as much as we can, and then eventually Halifax. So the whole goal is to consolidate, gather people across the country this year,
mhm.
so that we can try to execute something historical next year.
Like it. Any thoughts, and maybe this might be an off air topic, but any thoughts to if I wanted to go to the one in Halifax or the one in Toronto, but cost was prohibitive. Any thoughts to either a live stream or an ability to buy a lesser ticket in order to watch that as a live stream? Like I don't know the necessity of it,
Yeah.
or what that is, but
So I explored it, and it's a possibility. We would have to plan it out properly to ensure that it gets full value of streaming it. So if we stream it and like 10 people are watching,
mhm,
it might not be that effective a tool because it does cost money to create these things to make it happen, right?
mm,
So I would have to figure out how to make that work.
gotcha.
At this stage in the game, I'm not sure if it's feasible, but we'll see. Never say never.
We'll talk off air. I just I wanted to put that bug in your ear while it was here and officially recorded. So,
Yeah.
anyways, such obviously we've spent most of the time talking about your night to inspire, but anything else going on for you?
No, man, just the night to inspire. All focus has been there. I'm still training, doing all those things, but that's kind of what I do. After the gala, we'll be organizing and planning and creating my run 60 52. 60 kilometers a day for 52 days. So really the logistical planning for that. And then I'll be starting a well, the Such in Motion Foundation will be starting in April, where um, anybody who wants to donate to the foundation that I'm creating, I'll give it real briefly. What we're going to try to do is donating funds to this Such a Motion Foundation, where we'll be able to issue tax receipts to individuals or corporations if they want to donate. And then through that, the amount of money that we generate at the end of each year, I will have 3 to 5 charities that I'll be sending money to. One of them will be the Honor House Society, and one of them will be Kids Play Foundation. Another one, I'm still working on the other 2 or 3, but they will likely be mental health related, either female, men, something to that capacity. So that's what the direction is, and the website will be fully fledged out in the next few weeks to a month, so that if people want to donate, they go straight to the webpage, click the thing, get your tax receipt, and Bob's your uncle.
Nice. I like it. It's you've got some great stuff coming up. I can't wait to come along with the ride on this one.
Yeah, man.
And from a podcast standpoint, some absolutely just stellar guests that we've had on. Some great engagement, and just to let everybody know, we have a plethora, for a big word, of guests coming up that I couldn't be any more excited for. So please stay tuned. If you have a guest that you think that we should have on, hit us up on Instagram or our webpage or our email, thirdperspectivepodcast@gmail.com, and let us know. I'm trying to do all the scheduling of it, and some people's schedules kind of overlap and stuff like that. So it's nice to know a little bit ahead of time, but hit us up, let us know. Anyways, I think that's about it for today. Pretty good talk anyways, but a
Yeah, it was
little weird
awesome,
not
man.
having a guest end us off with final thoughts, but anyways,
It's okay. We can't do it
yeah,
every week. It can't be Christmas every day.
it can't be Christmas every day. I like that one. All right, guys, from all of us here, thanks very much.
See you guys later.
See ya.